last night, UFC 157, first ever UFC main event involving a women's fight, a women's match. First match for Ronda Rousey, the Strikeforce champ in UFC. A signature win for her as well. And the legacy and the hype continues now for her and obviously for the women's division.
Yeah, the first ever fight for the women in the UFC. Very successful, a hell of a fight put on by Liz Carmouche. Not a lot of people giving her any kind of chance, a plus 600 underdog going into the fight. But Liz looked real good. She took Ronda's back at one point, tried to get kind of like a jaw crusher, not quite a rear naked choke, more of a neck, kind of a neck move where she's just kind of hurting her neck without really trying to get the choke. She wasn't able to slip her arm under, so it was kind of a neck crank there from Carmouche. Wasn't able to finish. Ronda Rousey escaping the neck crank and then finishing as she does. First round armbar submission once again for Ronda Rousey. She improves to 7-0 as a professional, just 26 years old. She's accomplished quite a bit in her 26 years of life. She is now the first ever UFC women's champion, a bronze medalist in the Olympics in 2008 in judo. Ronda Rousey is the real deal, and she had a great performance last night in the main event.
A Montrealer on the card last night did not fare as well. We'll get to him momentarily, but just a little more on her, Dave. For those that don't watch MMA, that don't follow the UFC, Ronda Rousey is one of these, I guess, characters or individuals that has that star power, that star quality that attracts even the most casual of fan to her sport. And if you haven't seen her, she's just very likable, very down to earth. Certainly quite appealing as well, which obviously adds to her allure in wanting to see what she can do in the ring.
You're talking about
she's looking, but she also is fun to watch in an interview. Or she's very likable. She's a likable, cat. You know what I mean?
She's outspoken. She's willing to speak her mind and say whatever she's feeling, and people like that. She's not afraid to talk trash or talking about how good she is.
Also, her backstory as well, right? She's not coming from means, and also the pedigree with her mom is interesting.
Yeah, her mom was a great judo player and taught her from a very young age, and Ronda lost her father at a young age as well, raised by a single mother. So, she's been through a lot. She's worked very hard, and now she's finally where she needs to be, at the top of the UFC women's division, and looks like the winner of Miesha Tate versus Kat Zingano will probably get the next shot at Ronda Rousey.
When does that take place?
That'll take place in early April. So
she's off for a while now.
Yeah, Ronda won't fight until, I would say, at the earliest June or July. I don't see her fighting before
And it's
then.
not in the best interest of the UFC either to have her fight. You want to build it up, but also you want to have her be the champ as long as possible, to have her be the face, I guess, of women's MMA, because she's so sought after by even mainstream media.
You could say that, but you could also say, hey, why not put Ronda Rousey in as many events as possible, because she's a big-name draw and people want to see her fight. So why not make as much money off Ronda Rousey as you can? Right. If you make money off Ronda Rousey twice a year, it's not as good as if you were making money off of her 3 times a year.
That's fair. That's a very fair point. All right, so let's get to the Montrealer last night and how he fared.
Yeah, Ivan Menjivar suffering a loss last night, a first-round rear naked choke submission by the California kid, Uriah Faber. It was a tough fight for Ivan Menjivar. Faber is just a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal fighter. He is one of the best at 135 pounds. He just hasn't been able to beat, Dominic Cruz or Hernan Barao. Barao's the interim champion. Cruz is the champion right now on an injury. But Faber really is one of the best at 135. I'd say he's the third best in the world right now, behind Barao and Dominic Cruz.
But no shame in the loss.
No shame in the loss for Ivan Menjivar. And it was just an unbelievable move by Uriah Faber to jump on Menjivar's back and then kind of transition his weight to then fully take the back and lock in that body triangle. It was just a crazy move from Uriah Faber that you just never, ever see in MMA. And he was able to pull it off and finish Menjivar with that rear naked choke while standing. Menjivar standing up, Faber had his back with that body triangle. It was crazy to see. Very impressive win from Uriah Faber. He looked phenomenal. First round, just 4 minutes, 34 seconds to get the tap out.
Chatting with Dave Simon from Ringside Report Radio as well as ringsidereport.net, getting a lowdown from UFC 157 last night. Fight of the night?
Fight of the night went to Matt Grice and Dennis Bermudez. They went to war. Grice just refused to lose. He just didn't go down, took several big punches, big elbows, and looked like he was out on his feet a couple times. Managed to survive. Bermudez wound up winning the fight by decision, but that was an absolute war. We saw a lot of great fights last night, and, a lot of guys were fighting because their jobs are on the line. Dana White said that the UFC has 100 too many fighters on their roster. They have over 400 fighters, and they're looking to cut 100. They cut 16 guys on Tuesday, and they're going to cut more. So a lot of the guys that came out losing last night will be cut from the UFC, and they were fighting as their jobs.
But not Menjivar.
Well, I don't know. It's possible. It's possible he gets cut from the UFC. I mean, John Fitch was cut from the UFC, and he went 14-3 in 6 years in the octagon. 14 wins, 3 losses. One of those losses is to George St. Pierre. Another one of those losses is to Johnny Hendricks. And the third loss was to, I'm drawing a blank right now. GSP, Johnny Hendricks. Who else beat? Oh, yeah, Damian Maia just beat Fitch recently. So he's losing to some really, really tough guys and beating some really tough guys, and even he was released by the UFC.
So is he a Bellator candidate then, perhaps?
Bellator has said they're not interested in John Fitch. There's word that the World Series of Fighting, which is another fight promotion that airs on NBC Sports Network, I think that they've pretty much signed John Fitch.
Why would someone not be interested in a guy who's 14-3?
14-3 in the UFC. He's got a different record,
right? Okay, fair.
In total, but he's got a great record. He's only ever lost, I think, once outside of the octagon. Bellator likes to build their own stars kind of from the ground up, and they don't like to bring in guys that are coming off losses in the UFC. It makes them look like they're
sloppy seconds.
Yeah, they're just a place for the rejects of the UFC to go. So Bellator doesn't want to do that. They're looking at building their own stars, and they've done well doing so. I don't really blame Bellator for not going after Fitch, and I think it's a smart move from the World Series of Fighting. He's a big name that'll draw people into their product.
He is Dave Simon. You can catch him on www.ringsidereport.net. He's back on Wednesday. I believe that is a late show, Dave. Yeah. So probably around midnight or so, 11:30 possibly.
Whenever those guys decide to finish skating around. And
Delmore Habs post-game show. What do you have on tap after that?
We'll be recapping UFC 157 in its entirety. We'll also preview Bellator 91 that goes down on Thursday night. And, who knows? We're expecting to have George St. Pierre and Patrick Cote and John McDessie and several others on the show on Friday. So a big show on Friday, and nice. We'll recap the action from last night on Wednesday.
All right, there you go. That's Dave Simon from Ringside Report Radio. It is Game Points here on TSN 690